Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. We're celebrating the history of logging today because National Logger Day is October 12th. So we thought it would be kind of nifty to have what loggers used to do and kind of the history and what has taken us up until now.
Yeah, no doubt, Renee. Excited to be with you here today on this beautiful day here in Lexington, Kentucky. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. I'm really excited about our show today, right? In Kentucky, we have a really large logging force, right? And without them, our landowners have no way, really, largely, of getting their product to the mill, right? So,
Right.
and our forest industries, around 18 billion in total economic contribution, right? Without loggers, that doesn't really happen. So logging is important. Our loggers are important, and they do a lot of great work out there for us, and they're a big part of our society and our community. And we're just excited to be celebrating them. We have two representatives from the Kentucky Master Logger Program that are going to be our presenters today. One you all have seen before, and one we've got a first timer. And I'm
first timer, woohoo!
So first, we're going to have Miss Beth Williams come up in just a moment. She's going to be talking about the history of logging, and Beth coordinates the Master Logger Program, and she works very closely with Mr. Michael Ammerman, who directs that program, and he's going to be talking about this new grant program that we just got. It'll be rolling out soon, but we're going to be able to get some temporary bridges to help out the logging community and landowners so that we can kind of protect our water quality when we're doing this. It'll make the loggers a lot more efficient. It's going to be a win-win for everybody. So Michael will be talking about that. But Renee, really excited about today's program. It's really kind of a fundamental part of forest and forest management here in Kentucky. So yay.
Definitely. Yeah, let's get started. So Beth, if you'd like to turn your camera on. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi. Yes. I guess they figured out I'm the first timer.
You're the first timer, man. We're so excited to have you. And, Beth, we get to work with you and beside you often, but it's so nice to have you on the show with us today.
Yeah, literally between offices, Beth is between me and Billy.
Yes.
So, down the hall. So we get to see Beth a lot and work with her a lot. But, we thought, hey, this is National Logger Day is the 12th of October.
Yep.
So what better to have someone on than you to talk about the Master Logger Program?
No doubt.
Well, I am tickled that you all invited me to be on here. And naturally, yes, it falls perfectly with the National Logger Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, that would be great.
Okay. So guys, today, like I said, it is, this week is coming up is National Logger Day. And so we want to, thank our loggers and appreciate that. These guys are in the top three, historically, the top three most dangerous jobs, always. They're never number four. They are always typically number one and two. So what I have put together is kind of just a little history of logging, but just for Kentucky. So I feel like we can't really talk anything about history without mentioning our Native Americans, because of course they were here first and they used our forest, very wisely. From things like building and construction, of course, that's where the logging comes in. Even the canoes, they would cut down logs, poplar and so forth, the larger ones, and hold them out, dig them out and burn them and create canoes so that they could do their fishing. They made water carriers out of the knots and burls. They were just all around good stewards of the forest. They even, and I like to mention that they practiced silviculture because they managed for their nut trees. They wanted to ensure that the wildlife, maintained their wildlife by having those nuts each year, plus the food aspect of that for themselves. So, and these date back to about 2,500 years ago. So in Kentucky, we had the Adena people that were like hunter-gatherer gardeners, and they began the use of our forest here. Now, when it comes to the settlers, so logging began with the settlers in about 1607 in the Northeast United States. Of course, that's where they came to, was the New England states up that way. Old growth timber was so plentiful then, and mostly they used it for construction, building their homes, their forts, anything they could think of to build, they used the forest for. So the first Europeans that actually visited Kentucky in the late 17th century, in the 1670s. And then moving right along, we'll talk about some land uses in Kentucky. So early 18th century, in the 1700s, we had a lot of land clearing going on. We had widespread burning, grazing for our animals. We also started the tanneries, the iron furnaces. Between 1700 and 1800, we did have coal discovered in Kentucky, but it took about 50, 60 years for that mining to begin. And during that time, in the 1800s, we had industrialization. We did have a lot of uncontrolled logging. They continued to burn, and there were some not so great farm practices going on then. So in the 1900s, conservation started. The wildfires, they started putting them out. They created the Division of Forestry. Among lots of states, they created the U.S. Forest Service, and they had a little more controlled farming. And then up to today, the Forest Conservation Act, now that passed in 1998, went into effect in 2000, and that created our Kentucky Master Loggers. So that's just a very brief, short history of our land uses and some of them. This slide just shows you some of the practices. We can see here that in the early 1700s, they were clearing even the hills, clearing it for crops. There's a picture of an old tannery. I love these old photos. There's a picture of an old iron furnace. There's still remnants of those around the state. If you ever get down to like Red River Gorge area or Daniel Boone National Forest, there are several on their forest. Then, as you can see in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they railwayed the logs out. They laid a lot of narrow gauge railway through the hills of East Kentucky and all throughout Kentucky to get those out. And then now there's a conservation practice, just a picture of a prescribed burn. So what really fascinates me is, and I know this is the most dangerous, one of the most dangerous jobs, but is the tools and the equipment that they used over the years. We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of danger. But I try to think about how all these older, especially the Native Americans, using stone tools to chop down the trees, and then smoothed wood, like from bone and antlers, like to smooth the wood or to plane it, kind of. Now, the early settlers here in Kentucky, and this is a picture from Kentucky, from Eastern Kentucky, they started with axes, with crosscut saws, and then on the larger virgin timber trees, they would have to actually create a springboard, which is the board that you see the guy with the axe standing on. And that was just enabled them to get up there where they could, chop away with their axe. The logs were held back by splash dams. So when they first started logging in Kentucky, they did not have the railways, of course, and they needed to get these moved out. So what they would do is, especially on these smaller streams, they would build up a dam, and then they would cut until the winter rains and the spring rains, and then they would release the dam and the logs would float down to the larger waterways. Once they got them floated down, they would actually make a raft out of them, and they would float them to the mills. And if you ever look at an early map of where our mills were, most of them were located along a river. And that's why. This, I just think, is great. I know this picture is not the best because it came out of like an old newspaper article. But this is down around Red River Gorge, just to show you there is still evidence in our creeks today of where they had those logging splash dams. So if you're ever walking around on a creek, an older one, and you see these notched out logs in the bottom of a creek or in a stream, you can know that that's probably part of an old logging splash dam. So in the early 1800s, we had like small mills all around Kentucky, and they were producing lumber mostly just for use at home. So later from 1870 to 1920, that's kind of our big logging boom here in Kentucky when it really was booming. There were large mills that got built. The railroads extended deeper into the forest. And like I said, those were like 3-foot narrow gauge lines in a lot of cases. And then we also had a lot of villages and logging camps that were built to house the workers. And this is just a kind of a grainy picture, but this is from East Kentucky, and this was a logging camp there. So they continued, and of course, most of those logging camps were on the streams because that's where they were working and they were floating them down. But around 1900, they were not floating them down streams. They had enough railway, and that's what they used after that. So during that logging boom in 1870, Kentucky produced 214 million board feet of lumber. Now that's a lot, considering you got to consider those tools they were using. They didn't have chainsaws, they didn't have skidders, they didn't have modern equipment. Even the sawmills were old hand-set sawmills. So these loggers worked hard. I mean, that's a lot of board feet of lumber, considering the tools and what they used to get it out of the woods. So we had a lot of large mills. I do have a lot of more information on East Kentucky because there's just a lot more info out there about the eastern part of the state with the Red River Gorge and Daniel Boone National Forest, as well as UK, which acquired the Robinson Forest, and we have a lot of history information about that. But we did have some larger mills in Jackson. We had one in Beattyville, Clay City, which, as you can see on the slide, that they had the Kentucky Union Railway Company in Powell County. And you can see in 1890, they began at one of America's largest timber processing plants. So unfortunately, in 1906, a mill fire led to the end of that in Clay City. But we also had mills in Irvin and Frankfort. And a lot of people, we know that Frankfort's our state capital, but they don't realize how big Frankfort was in the timber industry. Of course, it lays right on the Kentucky River. So 1907 was the peak. And that's when Kentucky produced 1 billion board feet. And there were actually 30,000 employees in the forest industry. And I just love these old pictures. It's really hard to pick which ones to put in there. But this is just an old picture of sawmills, of their log yards, and of the trains that were coming through the hills and hauling all those logs out. So, talking about, now we're jumping to today, economically speaking. And Billy mentioned that it was $18 billion industry, the forest industry is. But what I love about this chart here, if you look at this and you see the wood residue is what, 1550. Yes, this is their contribution in millions. Paper converters is pretty large. Pulp and paper manufacturing. But if you look down to the logging and forestry, 245. So it is the smallest piece of the forest industry chart. But if you take that one away, none of the other ones exist. If you take the logging away, take that dangerous job away from these guys, then there's not going to be wood manufacturing, secondary wood. We're not going to have that beautiful furniture. We're not going to have those 2x4s, 2x10s, etc. So the forest industry here in Kentucky, like Billy said, 18 billion. So it's a very large part of our economy. And believe it or not, it is bigger than the horse industry here, and it is bigger than the bourbon industry. So logging today, of course, our tools have changed a lot. We've got a lot of mechanized stuff. And even within these tools, we've got chainsaws, bulldozers, skidders, feller bunchers, knuckle booms, log trucks. About the 30s is when, about mid-30s, when the railway went away because they improved trucks enough to where they could haul the logs out of the woods. So all these tools, and when they started, oh my, I wish I could have found a good picture of the old chainsaws. Those guys had to be really stout to hold those things. Now, through the years, our chainsaws have become lighter. Our chainsaws have become safer. Our dozers, skidders, all of our equipment has had a lot of safety factors added to it. And it's still one of the most dangerous jobs, even with all those safety factors on there. Let's see. And here's just a little video because I love watching videos. And, if you're going to talk about logging, you got to have a chainsaw running in the background, right? And a tree falling. timber, right? So that picture, that video is actually from one of our classes that we have for the Kentucky Master Loggers. So we'll fast forward now. We're in 1992, where UK saw the need for some education, additional education, and some water quality issues possibly with the logging in Kentucky. I think it's interesting how much we learned. We started out, we were floating all these logs down our creeks, down our rivers, and now today we do everything in our power to protect those same creeks and those rivers and all of the, thousands of aquatic species that are in them. But in 1992, the University of Kentucky actually started the Kentucky Master Logger Program. And we actually had over 3,000 loggers in the state that took that class voluntarily. So Kentucky, though, passed the Kentucky Forest Conservation Act in 1998. So after that, UK, because they had already started the program and had all of the information, Kentucky Division of Forestry and Kentucky Forest Industries Association, they all formed this partnership, and we are still equal partners in the Kentucky Master Logger Program. Now, what that Master Logger, the Conservation Act did for the Master Loggers, it gave them until July of 2000 to be compliant, and it stated that they would have a Master Logger on their site. And we provide a 3-day program, and that is what the Conservation Act mandated, that they have at least one. And a lot of occasions, we have a lot more than that on a site who have successfully completed that 3-day program. So this is just kind of basic for the Kentucky Forest Conservation Act. The Kentucky Forest Conservation Act, we call it KFCA because that's a mouthful, Kentucky Forest Conservation Act. But it did pass General Assembly in July of 98, and it was to go into effect July 15th, 2000. And we basically, the whole act is to ensure that the Kentucky forests continue to benefit the state's citizens. The loggers have to use their best management practices. Now, what they are BMPs, we call them. What BMPs are practices to protect the water quality during agricultural, land, and silvicultural operations, which includes all the timber harvesting. So I think it's pretty cool that since the passing of this Conservation Act, and actually before, because we had those 3,000 voluntary ones going through the Master Logger Program, we have had over 11,000 loggers that have gone through our 3-day Master Logger Program. And today, as of today, we have over 2,300 active Master Loggers. Some of them actually went through the class, the 3-day class, back when it was voluntary, and they have kept their designation card up. Now, what the loggers have to do, we also require that every 3 years, they have 6 hours of continuing education. So the Kentucky Master Logger Program not only provides them that initial 3-day program, that's basically just a comprehensive class, and it's involves safety, it involves business practices, it involves all the laws and regulations, as well as a full day of those BMPs, or those best management practices. And so, like I said, when we see a logger, I'm sure that many of you have a logger, either whether it be in your family, maybe just in your community, but we really need to appreciate these guys. These jobs, since the onset, since the start of that, since the Native Americans, this was a dangerous path to go down. And for those that have stuck with it for 20 to 30, for their careers, I just think it's amazing that they've done this kind of work. Okay, well, that is, like I said, that's a quick down and dirty history of the logging in Kentucky. There's so much more. And I could have probably made that presentation last 2 hours with all of the information out there. Of course,
Probably.
our Robinson Forest, that UK acquired. We we've had that since, or UK, I say we, universities had that since 1923. And of course, we have a lot of statistics on all of the American chestnut that was logged and harvested there. And of course, we know that we're all interested in getting that back someday.
Mm-hmm.
So I look forward to that. But no, I appreciate you guys having me on. And, for everybody else that's on, if you see a logger this week, thank them.
No doubt.
No
Well,
doubt.
and Beth, thank you for all the service that you provide for the logging community here in Kentucky. You and Michael do a great job of supporting them and keeping them up to date on all their regulatory stuff. So, thank you. Really, you're an integral part of the whole forest industry here in Kentucky. There's no doubt.
Definitely. Because if all those master loggers that you were talking about, the ones that are, current today, you have had some hand in that making them current. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Yes.
Whether it was
It's
giving
good
them
stuff.
presentations or what have you. So we appreciate all that you do.
Yep.
Well, it's easy to do a job when you enjoy going to work.
Yes, ma'am.
And
That's
I
true.
really like the fact that I can help the loggers and be a part of the forest industry. I mean, I've been with forestry for a long time, and I've worked with loggers my entire career. So it's good to be on this end of it, training
Yeah.
them and helping them.
Well, we're glad we get to work with you on a regular basis, Beth, and thank you so much. And I guess technically you're a Kentucky Division of Forestry employee, even though are housed here in our department. So,
We claim her though.
yeah, we do. Hey, we work so closely with the Kentucky Division of Forestry. Yeah, we have to, right? We have to
Mhm.
partner and work together. So it's good stuff. Glad to have you.
Right. And I'm glad you claim me because I claim you guys too.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I think is a great thing and has been
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
98, 2000, whenever it started. So.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's a great relationship. It really is. Yep. Awesome. Wait, we're
Let's see.
Can you tell us about the trees which were bent to indicate a trail in the past? Hmm.
Mm.
I think we have talked about wayfinding and stuff in the past. Did you talk about that? I didn't remember that, Beth.
No,
Yeah.
the trees that were now what? Bent?
Yeah, I think it was common for Native Americans to mark a direction or whatever by going and bending saplings down, to kind of point in the direction of, whatever they were trying to indicate.
Yes. And then I know settlers would use hatches,
Yep.
hatch marks
Yep.
on
So,
certain species or maybe undesirables,
right.
hopefully,
Yes.
to mark paths and so forth through the trees
Yeah.
to find
Yeah.
them. And as thick
I
as
would
our
say,
forests are today, I can only imagine how thick they were when the Native Americans were here. So I'm sure that that practice was used a lot.
I'd say that they did it on whichever which was probably the most convenient.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Beth. We appreciate your
Appreciate
presentation.
you.
Appreciate you being the first timer, and I'm
I
sure you
know,
won't be
and
the
we'll get you
last.
back again, right? As you've got stuff that we need to get out to the community, the forestry community here in Kentucky. Come
Oh,
back.
yes.
Go. Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll get you back on.
Yep.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
All right. Keeping
All
the
right.
Master Logger theme going, we've got
Definitely.
Michael Ammerman up.
Michael, if you want to turn your camera on. Hey, welcome back to the show. You got a little
Hey.
different hat on. I know before we've had you doing GIS because of your expertise in that, but now we've got you a little different hat on with the Master Logger program.
Yeah, it seems like I appreciate y'all having me back. I think this is like my fifth or sixth time being on From the Woods
Yeah, it's
today, and I
awesome.
always enjoy it. Like you said, Renee, yeah, you've had me on here for showing off the small scale logging program all the way up to doing mapping and GIS stuff and things like that. But it's always good to be able to share some of this knowledge and some of this what's going on um, with our not just the Master Logger program, but also with our extension team. And it's just so much fun. There's a lot going on, and it's a great thing we're doing here. So
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
So now, you and a group of people, I know Billy was on there. I don't know. I'm sorry, I should know who else was on that grant, but submitted a grant to actually help with water quality in the loggers and the wood industry.
Yes, that is completely correct. So yes, along with me, I can't take all the credit. I had a lot of help from Billy. He did an excellent job. then also Dr. Stringer, where he, with some of his expertise in water quality and things like that, with some of these best management practices, some of his insights were very helpful. And then, the tons of publications that we read and went through that, kind of put into perspective how these things are helpful. Now, I'm just going to kind of give, since this program is essentially, as Billy knows, that this program is now really in its very elementary stages. We just got the funding. It hasn't even hit the bank account yet. So we've got approved for it and all that. So we're just kind of getting all the motions set in place. Wouldn't you agree, Billy, right now?
Yes, sir. I think that's a good setup for it.
Yeah. So, and then what's really great about this is, that not only does this program really help loggers and water quality, but it also helps with landowners and helps them kind of understand what they can kind of get out of this and what they can. Now they have a route for their loggers to essentially have better practice management work. And that's one of the reasons also why I brought Billy in on this is Billy might not be inclined with logging and things like that. But Billy is an expert when it comes to working with landowners and things like that. So really having his expertise there is awesome. So he's just as much responsible for making this grant happen as I am. So it's appreciate your help.
Teamwork.
Yay, team. All right. So why don't you go ahead and start your presentation and let us know exactly what you're talking about here.
All right. Oh, whoopsie. So awesome. So essentially, within the introduction, I'm just going to give a little introduction here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this new program we're starting within the University of Kentucky's Department of Forestry and our extension team, what we're working on. So essentially, we are starting this Kentucky Logging Bridge program. It will be titled the Kentucky Logging Bridge Program. We're almost got a logo that's ready to be released. It's not quite finished yet as the grant hasn't fully taken place yet, but it's coming. So it's not a matter of if it comes, it's a matter now of when it comes. And I'll go over kind of some of the timeline of what we expect here coming up. But this is going to be really, I'm looking really forward to this getting off the ground. So as I said, I'm Michael Airman. I am the director of the Kentucky Logging Bridge program that we're going to start. And then as Billy had mentioned earlier, I'm also the assistant director of the Kentucky Master Logger program, which Beth did such a great job of going over and giving some of the history of the Master Logger program and things like that. And so it was an excellent presentation. Appreciate that, Beth. Also, so what I'm going to start with is, so eventually we're essentially going to go over, so what is the Kentucky Logging Bridge program? So essentially what the Kentucky Logging Bridge program is, it's going to be a subsidized program through the University of Kentucky with funds from the United States Forest Service. And with that money, we're looking at per year, up to 3 years, anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million a year. So we could receive funding from anywhere from $1.5 million to $3 million. Actually, probably more like $2.5 million at the max. But essentially, for this year, we received $500,000 just to kind of see where this program goes, how well it does, and then we'll gauge that based on some more of the money we might need next year to ask for. But so essentially, what this program does is we're going to provide bridge mats for loggers and sawmills in the state of Kentucky. And these sawmills will essentially be a these mats will essentially be a rent-to-own program through the University of Kentucky that's at a subsidized cost of what we essentially buy the bridges for. And what we do with that is these bridge mats, they're a much better form of channel crossings and things like that compared to other forms of crossing, such as fords and just essentially just regular stream crossings as if you were going to drive through the stream. But that's kind of what's going on with it. And then with that, so the people that are eligible for this are you must either be a logger or a sawmill personnel. So one way we're going to verify that for loggers is if you have your master logger card, we will consider you a logger, and then we will be essentially able to sell you or essentially rent to own these bridges. And so yeah, and then also for sawmill personnel, you can either give us like a check stub from the sawmill you work at, or it can be a business card, etc. We'll accept that. We're still kind of working on some of those details of what exactly will be acceptable, but for right now, we know that those will be acceptable forms of verification of your employment status with them or affiliation. So why is this logging bridge program needed? It's another great question. Well, first, it is to reduce suspended sediment in streams. So essentially, one of the largest environmental detriments when it comes to logging is essentially erosion. And really what that comes down to is the erosion that happens within streams. I'm sorry, it's suspended sediment that then ends up in streams, right? So as it rains, you can also sometimes see on log sites that don't have proper water management in place, you can see big ruts or giant ruts where the erosion, where the water is eroded through that dirt there, and then you can see almost like a channel forming. Well, a lot of that is when that picks up and forms that channel, a lot of that sediment in that dirt gets picked up and then ends up in waters, which then when that ends up in waters, you get that suspended sediment, which then lowers, which can affect streams and aquatic life and also the quality of water. Nobody wants to drink water that has dirt in it. Um, but really, as you get there, you can see higher rates of it lowers the dissolved oxygen level. It can increase temperatures or decrease temperatures. Um, it's just overall not really something you want in the streams. And these bridges are the best way in logging practice to keep some of that sediment out of the stream versus anything such as a culvert or an elevated crossing and things like that. It creates, and since you don't have to do anything really in the stream bed, it doesn't create any disturbance within the stream bed. It just goes from one side to the other and support it from the banks of those streams. So one thing too that's interesting with temporary wooden stream bridges are more environmentally friendly, like I said, than other stream crossing options. I'm sorry, I just repeated essentially what I said. Um, buying these timber mats, and what's really interesting about this is that not a lot of loggers have the means essentially to afford these timber mats or these stream crossings that are made out of wood because they are relatively expensive. Like one 18-foot section can cost you anywhere from $400 to $600, and then you usually need three of those to make a full bridge. So you're looking at over $1,200 at minimum to have just one bridge, just have one stream crossing essentially. And with this program, we're going to try and essentially cut that cost into a fourth. Let's see here. So here's kind of what one of these channel crossings look like when a skidder essentially goes over with a log. So essentially, if we go back and look at this, you can see here that as this log is essentially coming across this bridge, you can see that along the edges here, the dirt is kept and that soil and that sediment is kept on top of the bridge. You don't see it falling as much into that stream versus if you were to have a broad, any kind of other stream crossing that goes through there that you would see sediment runoff, and all that dirt that's getting dragged across that bridge there would essentially end up in that stream, thus then raising your suspended sediment. And then you can also see that these bridges, these timber mats, essentially are more than capable of supporting these machines and these logs crossing. All right. So essentially, here's what the bridge cost is going to be for these. So one mat that is going to be 18 feet we're going to sell it for $106.25. So essentially, whatever we pay for them, we're selling them to you or renting them to you for 25% the cost of the bridge mat. So essentially, the 18 footers are about $425 for an 18 footer. So we're charging you $106 for that. One 20-foot mat is sold for $220. I think they're sold for somewhere like $880 or something like that for a 20 footer, and then so on with the 24 footers. So $275 is what we will essentially sell or rent to you for one 24-foot mat. Also, we're going to sell them in sections. This is what that is three mats combined because these mats come in sizes of 18 by 18 by 4 foot. So we essentially determined that in order to make a full bridge, you're going to need 12 feet in your width. So that way you have enough proper room for this equipment to cross. And essentially what we're going to do is we will give you these bridges at that price. We'll give you three sections, or we'll give you one section, three mats for $300 for the 18 footers. The 20 footers will be $640 for a section, and then the 24 footers will be $800 for a section. And then we also will have some special circumstances for some 30 footers if you need them. but that will be based on an as needed basis and also as the funds are available as well. So with that being said, that's all kind of I have on that presentation. Now, does anybody have any kind of questions or concerns on this? Like I said, these were kind of still in the infant stages of this program, and it's still being developed. But within these infant stages, I mean, we are going to have a bigger program coming out of here, and we'll have Billy will kind of keep y'all updated on that as he's also goes alongside with this program. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Billy. Billy will. I'm sure if Billy doesn't exactly know what essentially the protocols are for this, I'm sure he'll be able to find out for you. So,
let me ask you this: like, how long does this program last? Like, when can I know you said it's not started yet? When can loggers start calling and requesting? You know, that kind of thing.
That is a great question. So you can go ahead. So should I answer that question, Renee, or go ahead and answer yours real quick?
Whichever, it doesn't matter.
Yep. Get them both.
Get them both. It's fine.
Okay. So the answer to, I think that was Annie that asked that. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Annie said if we don't do logging, can we still buy a bridge?
So essentially the answer to that question is no.
No, unfortunately. I mean, it's not really what that's intended for, right? It's intended for logging purposes is what those bridges are for. And that's what the grant program is, tied to. It's not just kind of creating, temporary bridges. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you have a master logger card, and then you can show that, so you have to go through the master logger program. Yeah. And we'll be more than happy to train you and get you trained up on that. But you will also, if you don't have a master logger's card, the only other way for that to happen would be for you to have a verified sawmill, like to be working with a sawmill and things like that. But if you're a master logger, then you also say, hey, I'm doing land management, I'm moving some timber, I would use it. So that's your option. But in the short answer, your answer, as Billy said, is no. Sorry, but there are options essentially for you to kind of, I don't want to say work around that because you're not working around it, but there is options that you have to kind of make that happen.
Right. But
depending on what you're doing.
I was going to say it's a good point. I'm assuming she's a landowner. So, we want this to work for landowners too. So landowners could inquire about this. Their loggers may not know about it or whatever. So we want everybody to be aware of this opportunity, mm-hmm. that's engaged in those logging operations. And certainly the landowner is a big part of those because it's their land that's being logged, right? But we want to help the loggers be more efficient. We want to take care of water quality. We think everybody can benefit from it, but it is intended for loggers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So back to my question, Michael. When does this start?
Yeah. So this program, I'm hoping to have it off the ground January 1st. Mm-hmm. Now you can inquire with me, or you can call Billy, or you can call Renee, and she'll hook you up with my number, hook you up with Billy. It doesn't matter. But essentially, what's going to happen is we're going to have a coordinator through this program that we're hiring. Mm-hmm. We have a little bit of money for that. And they'll have a number set up, and they'll have the main office. I failed to mention that this program will be headquartered at the Wood Utilization Center in Quicksand, Kentucky. And that's essentially where they'll be located, but they will have a number. We'll put that out in our log jam, and then I think Billy will probably do some stuff with that, sending it out to who kind of needs to, and then we'll get all that set up. But you can email me or Billy, and or you can call Renee and get my number, get Billy's number, or vice versa. And we'll go ahead and start kind of taking orders for this and get everything kind of meshed, but we won't really be able to send them out until we have the funding. Until the funding hits the bank. We've been approved for it, but that's kind of what's happening. And also to answer the other part of your question, is this program is going to last for at least 3 years. We could see funding extended up to 5 years. I'm hoping to see funding extended up to 5 years, depending on. Obviously, it's a federal program, so it's more of we have a pot of money and it lasts, it's there until the money's over with, right? So it's definitely at least be for 3 years, but I do hope to see it go for 5 years. But
now, one time it said rent to own. So do they rent these, or do they? Okay, or there are two options.
Yeah, so there's two options you have. We can either make a payment plan of 6 months. So, like if we were to sell your bridge for $100, we can divvy that up into six easy payments. Or if
Mhm.
it's easier, you can just write us a check for that whole payment, and
Mhm.
then we will
Yeah.
essentially it'll be
So
your
rent
bridge.
to
So,
own, Renee.
Rent to
or
own.
you
Got
so
it. Okay.
but you can write us a full check, and we'll consider that part of your six monthly payments. We'll just divvy it
Gotcha.
up throughout those 6 months is the
All
plan.
right.
So
Awesome. Well, it sounds like this program could really help landowners and loggers,
It will.
both. And so, thank you to both of you for doing that for the landowners and the loggers of Kentucky.
Yeah, and I would tell everybody, stay tuned to From the Woods Today. We'll be making those announcements on this show and our other outlets. So if you're getting email communication from us on a regular basis, you'll know when this is available for signups. We will let you know.
And if you're not, and this is the first time you've seen this, or you're like, hey, I didn't know you all sent notifications, you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com and sign up for that. There's a little notification button. So, Michael, thank you so much.
Yeah,
We
good
appreciate you
stuff.
being on here.
Yeah, I'm
Good
excited to
stuff.
be working with you on it too, Michael. It's going to be good. Yep.
I can't wait. I
Yeah,
can't
it'll be
wait. I
good.
can't wait to help out the state and help out our environment, and then help out, our citizens. That's really what we're here for, right? Is to
That's
help.
right. And we're going to be doing some field days over the next few years to spread out across the state, kind of demonstrating these bridges so people can actually see what we're talking about. So you'll learn
Lot
about
to
those
cover.
too. Yep.
Awesome.
Lot to cover.
Good
Thank
stuff,
you.
Thank you,
Michael.
Michael.
Keep it up, man. Good. Good. All right.
Good stuff. Good
Yes,
show, helping the loggers, and we really appreciate Beth. Thanks
yeah.
for being on, Beth. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I just wanted to add one comment because we
Sure.
some of the larger companies, the sawmills and that contracted that have used these skidder bridges for years. And
Mhm.
I'm so excited to be able to kind of help the little guy,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because these bridges are great. And every logger that I've ever had use these bridges or timber mats,
Mhm.
they don't go back to culverts.
Yep.
There's so much less sediment deposited in that stream. And it's
Yeah.
so much time saved
Yes, they can
on
be more efficient.
installation and
Yep.
removal of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if there's any landowners on here today, and I know Michael will reiterate this, but that is thinking about having their timber harvested, keep the skidder bridges and the log bridges in mind for sure.
Yep.
And that's right. Like that's something you can ask your loggers too. Hey, there's this program. See if we would like these bridges to be used on our property. And
Yep.
like I said, that will with those stream crossings. Beth knows this better than anyone. She was an inspector on these with these sites for 20 plus years. And I mean, Beth has got the knowledge to tell you, hey, she's seen it firsthand multiple times that, hey, these elevated stream crossings work, right, Beth? I mean,
Exactly, exactly. And we do talk about the skidder bridges, of course, logging bridges in the 3-day because it is the best maximum water quality protection. And I also, a lot of times we use it, and if I'm losing the loggers, because they're like, oh, I can't afford a bridge. That's what a lot of them do.
Mhm.
Once with this skidder bridge program, we're going to enable them to be able to afford it. But there could be like the best white oak, the best walnut across a stream, and we have a lot of threatened and endangered species in Kentucky. And so the bridge is a perfect way for them to get across there and doing very minimal damage. Because in those situations, Billy and Renee, you cannot put a culvert in. You can't cross those streams without bridging it.
Right.
Gotcha.
And we've got tons of mussels and
Mhm.
lots of
Yes.
aquatic
And,
life.
There's
and
a ton of stuff in
yes,
the
yeah.
streams. Yes.
And lots of places where they could be deployed, across
Mhm.
our landscape for sure.
Yeah. And I
Awesome.
know Michael mentioned it's going to be, located in Jackson. We're going to headquarter it there. But I didn't catch it if you might have mentioned it, Michael. But we are going to provide these for the whole state.
Yes.
oh
We're going to
yeah,
have
they're for the
different
whole state.
bills.
We have locations scattered throughout the state that these can be picked up at. And then if you're outside of that range, of 50 miles of where locations are, we will, at a subsidized cost, also deliver it to your residential facility. So,
Sounds like
and
a
we'll
good
that
deal all
map.
the way around.
We're working on getting that map put together. There's a lot of moving parts that are going on right now, as we just received. We hadn't even received funding yet. Now we're just trying to get everything ready to receive funding. And then
I mean, you literally just learned that you received the grant. So, I mean, this being on this is awesome. So, so someone wanted to
so
know if there's a source for these privately for a landowner.
Yeah, there are
can I share
some
my screen real
mills that
quick?
do that. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Michael?
Okay. Chad Nyman has an excellent publication on the UK Forest Extension site of where you can, without the unsubsidized, where you can purchase these bridges from. So if you want to purchase these bridges for landowner usage from a company, you can, and you can go to the University of Kentucky website, type in Crane Mat Suppliers, and Chad Nyman has an excellent publication on who you can call and contact.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us today. We greatly appreciate all of the presentations that y'all have done.
Yeah, nice work. Really good job. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Beth. And yeah, we'll have you back on as
Yeah.
appropriate. So,
Good stuff, Billy.
yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be working with Michael and Beth on this. And
Mhm.
yeah, so you'll see more, folks. We'll be talking about this a lot more as things roll out a little bit more.
Definitely. So, you know what? Happy National Logger Day
Go
on October
Loggers.
12th. We really appreciate all the stuff that you do for the forest industry. And thank you for your service for sure. But yeah, so again, let's see. I think that's all we have for today, but we really appreciate you joining us because, you know, if it wasn't for you all, we wouldn't have a show. So if you have any thoughts or any questions whatsoever, ideas for show topics, let us know.
Yeah, we would love to entertain them, and we've used some of those in the past to really put together some good shows. So thank you all. Really appreciate you. Let others know about it, right? There's other people who could benefit from the woods today, so help them benefit.
Definitely. Okay, we'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
From the woods today. From the woods today.